The Pittsburgh Steelers need to go and get a number 2 wide receiver, according to a lot of people. But what are they doing with the receivers on the team? New wide receivers coach Zach Azzanni spoke with us at Steelers minicamp, and I want to talk with him about how things have gone with George Pickens, Calvin Austin, and Roman Wilson, three of the bigger name wide receivers the Steelers have on the roster. To do that with me, we've got Mike DeFabo of The Athletic. It's going to be a lot of receivers talk here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes as well as our bonus content. Thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. As I said before, we're joined by Mike DeFabo of The Athletic. He's back on the show. Mike, it's good to see your smiling face on here yet.
Hey, great to see you, Chris. Let's get into it.
My man, he loves my catchphrase. If y'all don't know, Mike, every time Mike will see me, we'll be like out and about in the strip district. He'll be like, let's get into it. He hits me with that every
The best one was definitely on the final word on WPXI when we wrote into the script where Jenna, when she got to you, she was like, all right, Chris, let's get into it.
That was when she did that, I almost like cussed on camera. I was like,
I saw you were smiling.
But okay, I wanted to talk to you because you and I got the opportunity to talk with Zach Azzanni, the new wide receivers coach, and we both kind of liked what we heard from him. And I'm going to play the clip and actually the whole scrum that we had because it was a nice talk. But I get the impression that the Steelers got Zach Azzanni because he's going to be hands-on. He's going to challenge these guys, and he's going to be much more up in the face and on their case of this very young receiver room.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at some position coaches, and not saying there's a right or wrong way to do it, but there are some coaches that are happy to stand on the sideline and maybe say, hey, here's how we'd like you to do things. That's not Zach Azzanni. I mean, there's videos going around that you could see from OTAs and minicamp. He was on his hands and knees, slamming the ground, pounding it, saying, here's how I want you to do it. 1-2, 1-2 with your feet. I mean, He's wearing wide receiver gloves. He's showing them how he wants to hit the sled. You know, He's very, very intense. He said that he's a perfectionist by his nature. And I think that's exactly what this wide receiver core needs. You know, they have a lot of different guys at different points in their careers. A lot of guys like George Pickens trying to take that next step forward, guys like Calvin Austin. Then you got young guys like Roman Wilson trying to work their way into the league. So, you know, everything that I've heard and observed from, as they call him, Coach Z, Zach Azzanni, I've really gotten a good first impression from him.
Same here, and I want you all to get that impression with us. So here was Zach Azzanni when we talked to him earlier this week at Steelers minicamp.
How did that get taught to you where you're kind of teaching these young guys what you've learned?
That's a great question. I don't know. I've always been like that. You know, I just have always been hands-on, right there in the thick of it. I've had a lot of great mentors throughout the years as a coach. I mean, this is year 26 as a receiver coach, so I've kind of been in all areas of the pool, so I'm kind of in there and I kind of know what works, I think. So that's why I'm hands-on, and that's the best way. These guys learn visual, they learn physically, so that's why I am the way I am.
You got a lot of guys with NFL experience. Is that helpful that they've been somewhere else, or is that you have to kind of retrain some things?
Yeah, you know, they all come with their own bad and good habits, and we're just trying to get the habits that we want to create in our way, our style. We got a lot of guys in some cool areas of their careers, though. At year 4 going into year 5, you know, the only rookies we got is Roman, but George going into year 3. So we got some guys in some pivotal years. So, yeah, we're trying to create new and brand new habits for these guys. So, yes, we want to take their good habits, eliminate the bad, no matter if they're year 4, year 10, year 1, year 2. It's a blank slate.
Zach, there's been a lot of discussion outside of here about the number 2 receiver. How do you feel about your depth in the competition to be the guy behind yours?
Competition's been great. These guys, that's kind of what I mean by all these guys are at different spots in their career. Competition's been great. You know, I know that a lot gets made of the 1, the 2, the 3. Listen, these day and age, we move everyone around, and, you know, guys get balls depending on matchups. So that number thing's a little overrated to me. Yes, we're trying to find the best 3 or 4 we can put out there for sure.
What's the description of this unit? If you could put it in a few words, like if you could put a theme on the guys that you have right now.
Growing. Yeah, we're a work in progress. We're growing. Today was not a great day for us. All of a sudden, the routine changes, schedule changes, more plays. All the things we've been working on 8 weeks, they kind of went out the window at times. So, yeah, growing, work in progress.
You mentioned you're the kind of coach that's honest, transparent with guys. How has Roman taken to your style of coaching and some of the things you're giving him?
He probably loves to go home at night and get away from this building. I'm all over him, man. I have to be. We got a limited amount of time to get a guy ready to play an NFL football game. And, I always say we're taking players, making them into professionals. They're players when they come from college. They're not all instant professionals. There's a lot that goes into playing at the NFL level. And if you're not ready to go, week one, you can get exposed. There's a growing pain process there. So I got to be all over him from the second he walks in this building to the second he leaves at night. I have a limited amount of time to do it. And that's my job, so I'm going to squeeze every bit I can out of that sponge.
How have you seen George respond to your style of coaching versus what he was used to with the Steelers before?
Yeah, I don't know what he was used to. I don't really care. I just know how I do it. He's been great so far. Out here today, he was awesome. He's I can tell guys are listening when I say a little thing and they pick it up, and I can see him trying to do it. It might not be good yet, but I can see him trying. That's all I ask. George has been great as of today, so we'll stack the days and we'll see.
You feel like he's incorporating things that you're working on even at this stage of the year?
Little by little. Little by little. We got a long way to go with everything, but little by little. There's little things that I can see. Man, there's so much in there. Untapped potential. I think if we can just get him a little bit better, it'll be monumental.
You talked about coaches? one, two, three, but you know what George is in regards to that. I mean, can he be that true number one receiver?
He can be. It's right there for him. He's just gotta pick it up and take the cheese and do the things we ask him to do, and he can do anything he wants. He's that talented. I think you guys all know that Ray Charles can see that, right? You don't need to be a coach. So we know that's out there for him if he wants it. Now he's just got to keep stacking the days, and that's my job too.
What have you liked about Calvin Austin, and how have you challenged him to?
He's been outstanding. I mean, that's a guy that has gone from here to here in the last 8 weeks. I mean, it's been really fun to watch. He's a worker. He's intentful. He's urgent. He wants to be coached, and you can see it because his game has done that. And I'm really, really excited for his season if he keeps practicing the way he's been practicing.
Arthur Smith said earlier, just him being the new OC, and then you have new quarterbacks. Now you're the new receivers coach. I think you got Calvin and George, the only guys coming back. So a lot of new faces. Is that easier for you to kind of teach these guys because they're not kind of set in their ways of how things used to be?
Yeah, for sure, because everything's new to them. Yeah, as opposed to just one single position coach coming in and, kind of exactly. It's all new, which is good. So we're just dunking in the deep end of the pool right now, and everyone's like that. So we're all in the beginning infant stages of it. So that definitely helps for sure.
These crossroads guys, I guess, has anybody helped you as a coach kind of like become like a leader with you? That I guess the coach on the field player type. Has anybody kind of picked up that mantle yet?
You mean who?
Like a guy in your unit that's kind of the guy that...
Yeah, not yet. And only because I'm still new to them.
Okay.
They're still learning my ways. But yes, eventually I'd like to be a quiet coach. I want the room should start taking hold, and expectations need to bleed down. On any good unit, team, offense, all these dynasties you see out there, the coaches usually don't need to say much anymore because those expectations have bled down from... They already know the standard, right? Okay. Which Coach Tomlin's done a great job of as an entire organization. Now my job is to do that in my unit.
A lot of things were covered there by Zach Azzanni. We'll go over here with Mike DeFabo of The Athletic in just a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We still got a lot to discuss. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the app you can download right to your phone to buy tickets to all your favorite events without it being stressful. Game Time is where you can book tickets to your favorite sporting events and more. Whether you're a big NBA or NHL fan who's looking to score tickets to either league's finals and the NBA finals or the Stanley Cup finals, or you're a Steelers fan looking for tickets for next season, the best place to do all of that is with Game Time. Go to their website, gametime.co, or download their app, the Game Time app, right to your phone, and you can get the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all your sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. They give you killer deals even on last-minute tickets, and their best price guarantee that can't be beat. And you can save up to 60% off up to buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, and so many other events. Plus, Game Time's best price guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less somewhere else, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference of those prices. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase, or go to the website gametime.co. Terms and conditions apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Mike DeFabo of The Athletic. Mike, a lot of things were touched on by Zach Azzanni there, but I want to lead off with talking about how he talks about the details and trying to get, what he tries to get out of players. And he talked about George Pickens and said that he's picking up some of the things that he's doing there. And he wouldn't get into, what George might have been like before he got there. But it seemed like, at least from his perspective, and he also seems like a guy, he doesn't sugarcoat anything. He admitted hey, yesterday, that day when we recorded with him, the receivers had a bad day, but he gave Pickens credit for making short strides and improving smaller things in what they'd been working on so far.
Yeah, the way I look at it is, as Zach Azzanni said in a very humorous way, even Ray Charles can see George Pickens' talent. And it is obvious. And so I think for a player like him, it would be easy to say, well, the problems last year were the quarterback wasn't what he needed to be, the coordinator wasn't what he needed to be, and feel like I'm good, and it's just now with a different coordinator, different quarterback, I'll be fine. But obviously, any player could still continue to grow and continue to develop. And that's what I'm really interested in seeing is what can Zach Azzanni do to help elevate George Pickens and help him achieve his potential? Because right now it's just potential. He hasn't gone to a Pro Bowl yet.
Right.
He's just in his second season. I think really, truly, the sky is the limit for George Pickens. I think that he absolutely could be a perennial Pro Bowl type of player. I think that if he stacks seasons, he could even be a Hall of Fame caliber type of receiver just because of the raw potential. So now it's just a matter of which coach, which quarterback, which coordinator is going to pull that out of him. And I think that they're trending in the right direction there.
I think so too. I mean, it sounds like they're at least getting more out of him. And we also saw George Pickens grow up a little bit last year. He was, there was the game against the Colts where he didn't throw the block for Jalen Warren, and then the rest of the way you saw him throwing those blocks. You saw him with the intensity, and I thought those were very good things that you saw out of him. And you also saw him come up big in some of those games, like the touchdowns he had against the Cincinnati Bengals in those games. So I think George Pickens is certainly taking what he needs to learn and stride. But I also think it's interesting for Zach Azzanni. The Steelers needed a guy to come. This is a young wide receiver room. He even said, between George Pickens, Roman Wilson's a rookie, Calvin Austin's a third-year player, but he only has 2 years experience. He needs to kind of mold these guys, and they do need to create a bit of a culture when it comes to this wide receiver room. And I've talked a lot about the culture that needs to be established in the offense. And that's something that Arthur Smith's involved. But I think Azzanni being a guy who can be demanding, be into the details, and be able to get in the face of these players in the minute things. Tomlin gets in players' faces all the time, but he has to do that for the entire team. He needs guys like Azzanni who can be in these positions in the smaller roles, who can do that as well. And I think, at least so far, that's what we're seeing. And we're seeing guys in the receiver room be positively responsive to what Azzanni's coaching.
Yeah, exactly. The way I imagine it is right now, he's kind of trying to get those guys to buy in. He's trying to prove himself to them and show them, I know what I'm talking about. I'm here to help you. I can help you get better. If they believe that, then when there's a tough moment in a game, George Pickens is getting double teamed nonstop. He's a little frustrated. He's not getting the ball. That's when Zach Azzanni can pull him to the side and say, look, don't worry. Second half, we're going to get you. We'll get you your targets and stuff like that. And that's where I think that this period is important, is not only establishing how Zach Azzanni wants them to work, but also developing that relationship and so forth there. And I think that they're, once again, they're establishing that right now, and they're going the right way.
One thing I kind of noticed from the jump with OTAs and now minicamp, Calvin Austin seems to be putting in a lot of work. Like he seems to be one of the first guys to go through drills, really hustling, doing a lot of things. And then when we talk to guys, he seems to be impressed. We're going to play a clip from Roman Wilson in the next segment where he talks about his own struggles as far as what he's going through as a rookie, but he also has praise for what Calvin Austin's doing. But you saw Zach Azzanni's praise for Calvin Austin and saying he's been here, but now he's here, and the progress that he's making. And I find it really interesting, Mike, if Calvin Austin, if those results, and Azzanni even said, like, this has to translate, but if Calvin Austin can can really take a serious step up and be a serious threat for the Steelers, that does a lot for this offense. And I also think that if Austin can be a guy like that, that can lessen the blow of the Steelers needing to go get a really expensive number 2 or number 1 wide receiver if he can be the number 2 wide receiver.
Exactly. I mean, people kind of forget that he was also drafted in the same class as George Pickens. And he also was, what was he, a 3rd round draft pick?
4th rounder. Yeah.
4th round draft pick, where the Steelers have historically hit on guys like Roman Wilson, who was 3rd round, and with Calvin Austin. I was very fascinated actually by those comments. I found those some of the most interesting comments by Zach Azzanni, because I look at Calvin Austin as entering a very pivotal season. His first year was lost to injury. Last year, he showed flashes in the return game, I felt, when he had the ball in his hand. He hit a couple big plays, but he didn't necessarily have the impact that I expected him to on the offense as a whole. And I think some of that was what they were looking for out of the slot receiver. And ultimately, a lot of that became kind of a blocking role. So now in a different offense, and when they have question marks about who's going to step up as wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, I think there's a prime opportunity for Calvin Austin. And I feel like, if he takes a significant step forward, then he's beginning to really establish himself as a reliable target in the league. But if he's not able to really take that step, then you wonder where his career goes from here and if he fizzles a little bit. So I think if you're a Steelers fan, it's encouraging to hear that he definitely is making strides in OTAs. His position coach is seeing it. And so now it's just, for me, a matter of how much does he continue to grow and where does that evolution eventually lead?
It certainly, the evolution needs to be there. And if again, these are all ifs. It's also football in shorts, where a guy like Calvin Austin can thrive a bit more because he's smaller, he's quicker, he's faster. That's it. Can that translate to when the pads go on and he's going up against, say Joey Porter Jr. on every other play, and then when they get into preseason and they're starting to play those teams, how he produces there, and then in the regular season, can he go up against a starting corner in the NFL, not just in the slot but on the outside, create separation and be a big playmaker? Those are still big questions. But there's also big questions about Roman Wilson, the rookie they drafted out of Michigan. And Roman Wilson was a guy I personally liked a lot just from the tape that I saw him at Michigan. I thought certain things could translate. But we've talked about how in early on, he's gone through some struggles. He's going through some growing pains as far as adapting to things as a rookie. We got a chance to catch up with him. And you saw Zach Azzanni say, I get on him all the time to the point where he might get tired of me. Roman Wilson had a funny response to that when we brought that up. We'll get to that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Mike DeFabo of The Athletic. Stick with us. We'll be right back. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our show here with Mike DeFabo of The Athletic here. Mike, let's get into Roman Wilson here for a bit, because I got a chance to talk to Roman Wilson earlier in rookie camp, or it might have been OTAs. And, I asked him about the kind of back and forth he's had with Beanie Bishop, because Beanie Bishop said they have a nice little rivalry going on. They challenge each other. Roman Wilson felt like, I don't have a rival yet. It seemed like he was kind of feeling that. But there's been questions about, how Roman Wilson's doing. And you saw Azzanni say, like, hey, I'm on him all the time. And Roman Wilson's acknowledged, hey, I have a lot of fundamentals to kind of work through here. What's been your early impression of what the challenges Roman Wilson's had to face to kind of fit in the Steelers' wide receiver room?
Well, one thing that has really stuck out to me is Zach Azzanni, as we mentioned, very hands-on, very vocal type of coach. It feels like a lot of that coaching is being directed towards Roman Wilson. I can't tell you the number of times that they'll go through a drill and he'll say, no, Roman, no, do it like this. No, Roman, do it again. Roman, do it again. And so he definitely, I think Zach Azzanni understands that this is a rookie that is going to need to play an important role in this team. If he's able to provide that nice complement to George Pickens, be the reliable target, between the numbers and from the slot, I would feel pretty good about the receiving core. But if Roman Wilson struggles out of the gate, isn't ready until, midway through the season, or altogether just kind of takes a little while during his rookie season to get ready, that's where I have concerns about this wide receiver room. So, I think that right now Roman is kind of going through those early growing pains. I think that he's, definitely ups and downs is how I would describe it. But, I think with his raw potential, his speed, his ability to create after the catch, I do think that he's going to be eventually a nice piece of this receiving room, but he definitely has a ways to go. And I think that he definitely has plenty of room to continue to grow throughout, the next couple of weeks and through training camp.
We got a chance to talk to Roman Wilson during minicamp, and I thought he gave some interesting insights as far as what he has to do to be better, but also what he's learning and what Calvin Austin's done to impress. Here's Roman Wilson when we got to talk to him at Steelers minicamp.
Good. What up?
We're talking to Zach today just about how he's been coaching you. How have you taken on it? He seems like a very hands-on guy. How he's challenging you?
Very detailed, very high energy, he's just on me, bro. He's just making sure I'm doing the right thing every time, making sure I'm, keyed in and locked in, and I'm here for the right reasons, and I'm practicing and I'm doing the right things for the right reasons. He's a great coach, and I love playing for him.
Is that something you appreciate, him?
Yeah, for sure. Just I would rather him be the most hardest person I've ever been around than him not care. So I love him for the type of coach he is, and how he handles business.
He was kind of joking, saying when you go home, you're probably happy you don't hear his voice anymore.
Sometimes, I like I feel like I can text him and call him, and he's always going to answer, and I feel like I can have a genuine conversation with him. So, it's not like I'm not happy to see him. I love him, but sometimes it's too much. But it's good. I love it.
You talked about a lot of the details he's trying to go with. Do you feel some of the details working into your game? I know it's just OTAs and now minicamp, but can you see some of those things okay, I'm picking this up here and there?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of my technique and my craft I'm still working on it. Me and Coach Z go over about a lot, and I can definitely see it. Already creeping up into the way I play. I just don't want to get it to the point right now where I can just, not think about it. That's the big thing for me. It's just, take the details and the technique he gives me and just don't think about it. Go out there and do it.
How important do you think it's going to be to embrace this tough coaching early on to get yourself ready to play, ready for that first game?
Not hard at all. This is what I want. I want to be around a bunch of coaches who are going to coach me hard, and every day I come in here, I expect to leave getting 1% better. This is the place I want to be around. That's the type of coaches I want.
Is it similar at all to Michigan? With Michigan kind of?
Oh yeah, definitely. Through my later years in Michigan, I was an older guy. I got more leeway, so it feels really nice to be a young guy again, and just kind of have all the eyes on me again, and kind of have to. Every rep really matters. Every time I go on that field, everything matters. I just love that feeling.
Do you feel like there's a person that you're closest to as far as learning the offense with everybody else, or someone you spend more time with than anyone else?
I wouldn't say one person, but everybody in the receiver room treats me so well, and I feel like I'm really good friends with all of them already, and I feel like I can still call them up, text them, anybody, and they'll answer, and they'll be there for me. I'll be there for them. I love that room too.
What's George like? How
he's a great guy, man. He's funny. My first time meeting him, it was just a good vibe. He's a good guy, very laid back, very chill, very funny, and I really like having him in the room too as well.
Just, I know you're getting that hard coaching, but what specifically would you like to see your game grow and evolve? I'm sure it's going to be a process continuing throughout your career,
yeah.
Obviously, but where would you like to make the biggest strides early?
Yeah, for me, there's a lot of things, but step one for me is just playing lower, getting in and out of my breaks a little better, using my arms, and just turn up after the catch, keep doing the things I did at Michigan, and just keep playing well. That's all I got to do is just focus on those step one, step two, step three each day, and I'll be better.
Zach had a lot of praise for Calvin for what he's put in. How have you seen Calvin Austin approach things as far as being a rookie and seeing a veteran and how it works?
Right now, the way I look at Calvin is he's a veteran of the room. He's, in my opinion, I feel like he's more the leader of the room, and he's just a great guy, great teammate. I feel like I can talk to him. I feel like I can ask him questions. He asks me questions, and I just feel like he's a great dude. He's a phenomenal athlete, very twitchy, very fast, great hands. kind of just everything you want in a player. I mean, he's a great dude.
How about with, your new quarterbacks are also new. What's the process of developing that relationship, earning their trust on and off the field?
Yeah, I mean, just putting in the work with them, talking to them, trying to build a relationship off the field, like be comfortable around them. And, as far as all that stuff really goes, it's really up to me, whether or not I want them to look good or not. So I just go out there and do my best every time I can.
So a lot of different things there covered by Roman Wilson. I think there's some humility in acknowledging that, like, hey, Zach's on me for a reason. I have to get better. But Mike, I also think it's interesting that he pointed at Calvin Austin as a leader for like the work ethic that he's putting in. And that doesn't always translate to, success right in the NFL, either right away or eventually. But it sounded interesting to hear the way that he talked about how things have gone here in the early stages of his, first season.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of the Calvin Austin thing, I think it's interesting because typically the leader of a room has to be a guy with proven production or like a veteran that people look to and say, all right, this guy's done it before.
Right.
If we follow him, we're going to have a similar career. In the fact that Calvin is also still kind of figuring it out, it tells me that his head's in the right place, and it gives me more confidence that Calvin Austin is going to take the next step. I also just wanted to say, like, it stuck out to me that maybe Roman Wilson isn't out there lighting the world on fire at practice. He still has room to grow, and he's getting coached very, very hard. But look at those answers. Every one of those answers was exactly what you would want to hear. Like, if you played this interview for Mike Tomlin, I'm sure he's going to say, I love that he's saying, yeah, coach me like this, coach me hard. I want to get better. So, time will tell whether this process actually leads to production, but it definitely seems like Roman Wilson is the kind of person and player that when someone's on him and someone's critical of him or someone's saying you need to improve upon this, he doesn't cower. He doesn't run away from that. It seems like he's embracing it. And I think that that's definitely the attitude that you would expect a young player to take if they're going to actually make it in the NFL.
Absolutely. As Mike Tomlin says, you want to run two challenges, not away from them. And it sounds like, Roman Wilson's embracing that part.
And he did, if you go back to the Senior Bowl, Mike Tomlin challenged Roman Wilson, go every rep against Quinion Mitchell. And ultimately, whatever they saw either in his response to that or in the way he performed, caused them to draft him. So, I feel like they maybe saw a glimpse of, okay, this guy, when you challenge him, he responds to it. And now it's just happening in their facility here on the South Side.
And to your point, there is no established veteran that has done it at that high level. There's guys like Van Jefferson, Cordero Patterson, but none of those guys are looked at as the number one guy in this offense or even the number two guy in this offense right now when it comes to the receiving game. And I think that's where they need guys who are going to be willing to step up and can become that guy for the future. Like, for example, Roman Wilson, is a third-round draft pick. Hines Ward was a third-round draft pick. He was a guy who came in and, he wasn't a leader right away, but he developed into it because he was a hard worker. He took hard coaching, and then eventually he turned it into, a highly successful career and one of the best receivers in the history of the franchise. It's not saying Roman Wilson's going to be that. He's also a very different style of wide receiver compared to Hines Ward. But if Roman Wilson can take on that kind of approach and become that guy that knows how to take criticisms, knows how to fight through that, then if someday he becomes that leader, that when the Steelers' next first, second, third round pick wide receiver comes in, he can be like, hey, I've been where you at. I've been the struggle. Kind of like how Broderick Jones talks about how he tries to help Troy Fautanu and Zach Frazier be like, hey, last year I went through this. This was tough. This was a grind, but stick to it. Stay on it every day, and you're going to get through this. Having a guy like that, if he's able to overcome those challenges in this rookie season, having a guy like that could be huge for what we've been talking about. Needs to be a cultural reset as well as a schematic reset, but also a cultural reset for the Steelers offense.
Yeah, definitely. The way I would describe it is there was a lot of youth on the offense last year, and I felt like sometimes it manifested itself in the form of immaturity. And so you do need some guys to kind of grow up a little bit in a lot of different ways. So, I really appreciated the way that Roman was answering the questions and his response. Now, there's a difference between answering the questions right and actually doing it. But I felt like from what I've observed in practice, he so far has been taking what's been given to him. And like the other thing is, like receivers nowadays come in so ready to play. And this was considered an especially deep and talented wide receiver class. So even though Roman was a 3rd round draft pick, I mean, I think in a lot of years he would have gone 2nd round. I know at the Athletic, we had a 2nd round grade on him. I think that he absolutely can and should be an important piece of this offense at some point. The question for me is just how quickly he'll do that.
Certainly, we'll keep you up to date with all of those developments here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, just like Mike will at The Athletic. Mike, thanks so much for joining us here at the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let people can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at Mike DeFabo, and then always you can subscribe to The Athletic if you want to read more of my work.
Absolutely. He's Mike DeFabo. I'm Chris Carter. Thanks, Mike, for joining us. Thank you all for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm Chris Carter. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and all the social medias at Carter Critiques. You can read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. And you can find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of those daily episodes. We're back tomorrow finishing out the week right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.